features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
I challenge you to find a better way to spend a relaxed and lazy Sunday afternoon than sitting watching elephants rolling about in mud. It's so good to be back. This is Safari Live.
Ready. Standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
A very good afternoon to all of you and welcome on this afternoon's Sunset Safari, a live safari from the heart of Djuma Private Game Reserve, which is in the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa. My name is Jamie and this afternoon Craig is on camera with me. Craig, it's very good to be back. Very, very happy to be back from even back on the reserve that we know and love so well. Now, on your live safari, let's have a look at the elephant drinking. Don't forget to send through your questions, and you can do that using the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. And let's see what marvelous things come from this afternoon's safari. Oh, is that nice, boy? And these elephants have been having the time of their lives, rolling about in the mud, playing. One of them was absolutely fast asleep while Craig and I were sitting here earlier, waiting for the sunset safari to start. Now, I'm giving them plenty of space, just because there's a couple of little ones, and they've seemed to be a bit disgruntled. Not so much with us. I don't quite know what's upset them, but something seems to have disturbed them. So they ran away initially, and the little calf's been screaming for some completely unknown reason. I don't know what it's up to. There you go, boy. Go and join the rest of your herd. Now, this afternoon, I don't really have any plans. Just reacquainting myself with what's been going on. You always feel, and I mean, we've been gone for ages. It feels like we've been gone forever. I think it's been 3 weeks. And it always feels a little bit disorienting, so I apologize if I'm rusty, because I have a feeling that I might be. But also, it's nice to sort of try and get to know where all the animals are, reacquaint yourself with their movements. What are you digging for? This little one? Oh, it's having a scratch. That's what's happening. Now it's covered in a nice thick layer of mud on a hot afternoon. Time to scratch away all those itches and niggles and any ticks and exoparasites that the mud has caught on their skin. And it's a great learning opportunity when you're a tiny baby elephant and you don't quite know how to use your trunk. Hey, little one, is that the perfect scratching post? Your mom might need something a little bit bigger, but it's perfect elephant calf size. Oh, that looks like it really feels good, doesn't it, Craig? He's having so much fun. Rubbing away at the mud. It's always fascinating to watch elephants when they go and they have their mud baths, and then they'll go and they'll cover themselves with an extra layer of sand. Just for fun. Oh, I've done my trunk. Now it's time to scratch the bottom. Look at it wiggle. Awesome. I was going to challenge Brent and say that we'll have a little bit of a game, a challenge to see who can find the Queen of Djuma, since she's been a bit absent. I'm not going anywhere. However, there are plenty of people who would like to say hello to you this afternoon, one of whom is Tristan. Let's head out on foot with him.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our sunset safari on a beautiful summer, late summer's day. Now, as Jamie says, my name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got VM the Wildebeest, and as you can see behind me, we've got another Wildebeest, so it's not actually even VM, that's VM's cousin. Look at him go. He's been stalking us all afternoon and been very upset that we've been walking where he wanted to walk and shouted at us a little bit, but I'm quite surprised at how close he has come. Now, the most important part of our whole afternoon out here is you, the viewers. So please don't forget to send us lots of questions. We would love to hear from you, and you can just use the hashtag Safari Live handle on Twitter. Now, it is a very, very warm afternoon, and it's probably going to mean that a lot of the animals are near water or in shade. So I think what we're going to do is probably just follow some of the drainage lines around, check some of the mud wallows, and then look for little smaller things. I already noticed as we've been walking out lots of butterflies around. The problem is because it's quite hot, the butterflies are very energetic, so they're bouncing around all over the place, which makes it quite difficult to find them on camera, but we shall definitely try. I would imagine there'll be quite a few insects. There is also some warthogs, a little warthog family that we've got that are busy feeding. Then they tend to be in that same area every afternoon. Most afternoons I come out, they are busy sitting feeding away, and it's a young male with a female and then her current piglets, which is those three, and they always around feeding. You can actually see how short the grass is from them feeding in that area. But we're going to carry on. You can see the warthogs are moving off as we approach nearer to them. So while we do that, there is still one more team member that is back from leave and wants to say hello. So let's go across to Brent and see what his plans are.
Well, I think the warthogs are running away from Tristan's new haircut, to be honest. But my name is Brent Smith. I've got Fergus on camera with me today. And of course, we're on a live African safari. Very exciting to be back from leave. Hopefully, Queen Karula is going to show up for me. Remember, hashtag Safari Live if you want any questions. I'd love to hear from you. And hopefully, we're going to find a leopard or two. If not, it's just nice to be back in the bush. So let's see what we can find. Now, it's one of my favorite times of the year now, as we sort of rolling into winter. The grass starts changing color, and shortly the combretums are going to start going yellow, and you have that wonderful sort of bright, burnt fire color on the bushes. Now, it's going to be very interesting, and as we drive through Djuma today, I'm going to keep looking. You can see all the combretums around us at the moment are very green. So there we go, there's a nice one coming up here. But as we go through different parts of the reserve today, and areas that might not have got as much water, you'll notice that some of the combretums won't be green. They're already starting to have some yellow spots on them, so it's going to be fascinating to see. And it's always a good gauge of telling how much rain an area got, or whether there's underlying water. So it'll be fun to see. And of course, it's been 3 weeks. It's quite a long time, so I'm excited to see what's out and about. Hello, Mr. Impala. And now, of course, off he goes. Not a very friendly one. Now, they are looking in magnificent health at the moment, the male impalas. But as we move now further into April, we're going to start hearing that really distinctive sound of impalas ratting and chasing each other around. And actually, we'll try find a nice big impala ram and take a screenshot of it. And then we'll take another screenshot at the end of the rutting season. Those guys get so focused on sex, they literally lose all the weight. And it's a very good time for the leopards, because the males are often so concentrated on trying to protect their little harem. Yep, there's some Ellies up ahead, that they will lose condition completely. So they actually become skin and bones by the end of the rut. Hello, elephants. Oh, hello, madam. You've been having a nice time. Hello, big girl. It's okay. There we go. Just gave us a little head shake, just letting us know that she's there. And there's a couple around. I can only see two at the moment. There we go. Hello, little one. Oh, I'm having a nice bum rub on the right. Let's just go forward a little bit. Oh, no, she's finished. Oh, it's okay. There we go. Nice big adult female. You can see she's found a nice pan. Oh, what has she broken? Very nice smell. She broke a branch, or she's walked through. It smells like jasmine. It smells like she's walked through a plant. Elephants don't often. Oh, there comes a little one. Don't feed on jasmine, but because it's a creeper and it's growing on trees, and they often will break it, and that smell emanates out. Let's go forward a bit. So Well, a big thank you for all the welcome backs. Jamie and I are ecstatic to be back. And here we go. It's okay, little one. Don't have a panic. Yes, it looks like a little boy, and he's going to shake his head at us. He might, as I stop, decide that he's going to be brave. But I think his mom's a little bit too far away for him to be too brave. He'll probably only decide to be brave when he's behind mom. Only 3 here, and I'm pretty sure there's quite a lot more spread out through the bush. These breeding herds, specifically during this time of the day, they quite often spread, a single herd can be spread over a kilometer. And of course they have that incredible communication between them. And if you ever watch elephants together, it always amazes me. You can't hear it, but there's something that's being said, and everyone listens and everyone shoots off or decides to charge or stands their ground. And it is incredible. They definitely have probably one of the more complex forms of communication of all the animals out in the African bush. Oh, so nice to be out in the bush again. Okay. Let's leave the Ellies. They're gonna keep moving on. And again, thank you for all the welcome backs. Great to be back. Now, I've decided, I think you guys have been on holiday while we've been on holiday, so it's time for a quiz. What are we gonna quiz you on today? Aha. Elephants, since we've seen elephants. I want to know, what is the largest body-sized African elephant bull ever recorded, and what country was it in? So, what country was it in? How heavy was it? African elephant, we're not accepting Asian elephants, we are in Africa after all, and the African elephants are much, much bigger. So, and James is obviously lucky enough looking at Asiatic elephants in India at the moment. I'm a little jealous, I won't lie, but very, very exciting times ahead. So, hashtag Safari Live, what is the largest or heaviest body-sized African elephant ever recorded, and in what country was it recorded in? There's lots of elephants, but they're all quite far. I'm just going to try and see if they're out in the open a little bit ahead. Now, while we try and see if we can find the rest of the herd, let's go back to Tristan and his schoolboy haircut on bushwalk.
Well, thank you, Brent Leo Smith. You had a schoolboy haircut not too long ago either. Luckily, yours has grown out, so we can't compare, but you also had yours cut, and I shall dig up those photos of when you were in your modeling days, and then we'll compare schoolboy haircuts and see who's got a better one. But that is actually quite nice to have this haircut in weather like this. It's a little breezy this afternoon, it's fluttering around my ears, and it's much cooler than it was this time last week when I had long hair, so I'm quite happy with my haircut. Thank you very much. Now, Debbie, you're wondering how many insects are active during the winter. Well, it depends. I mean, obviously conditions will change in the winter, and we'll get days of very, very cold, windy weather, and that's when the insects really get sort of very few and far between. But you'll find there'll still be flies around, so quite a number of flies that are still hang around. We'll get very few moths, but there will be some moths. There'll be varying crickets that will still be around, so there's a few but not many. It's not like now where we've got this massive biodiversity of all these different. So there's a whole bunch of wildebeest. Sorry, I just heard some branches cracking, so I thought maybe we had some Ellies close by, but it's wildebeest. So the male wildebeest was in front, and there you go, the females trotting across the road. So there's the whole herd, little baby as well. Sorry guys, did we disturb you? Now, it's because it's so warm, that's why they're not out on quarantine. It's probably too hot there, whereas here where they were now is quite shady and cool. There's also quite a lot of grass in that area that they can feed off. But you can see how fast they are when they do run. It looks like they've just stopped here just to watch us. So they ran across the road because the road is far more open, and so it's a lot more difficult for them to get sort of spot predators in these thickets, and they try and quickly get and try and find somewhere where they can hide and not be right out in the open. In case predators were lying in the open and they came out where they could have been tackled, they try and get into a thicket where they can start to hide, and the little babies can get into some long grass and hide away there. So very clever from the wildebeest, and I'm sure from here they're going to go back to quarantine and go and spend the night up there. And this male will be very happy. He was the one that was following us the whole way, and probably why he was grunting is because we were between him and his herd. So he's going to have now caught up with his herd, and he's going to be a lot happier fella, and he's probably not going to grunt at us anymore. As you can hear, he's actually quite quiet now. But back to the insects, we're not going to see too many in the winter months. There are still some, and there are some that are needed to be able to deal with some of the things that we have out here. So particularly flies and maggots that help just break down a lot of the carcasses, so we need those, so they'll be around. And then, like I said, a few moths here and there and a few little beetles, but it's really very limited in comparison to what we have now. And the reason why is because it's just so much less food. A lot of the insects that we're seeing now are feeding either off flowers or off vegetation, which in the winter months is not going to be here at all. So that's why the insect numbers will decrease, but I'm not sure on an exact number. See, you're wondering if there's any animals that hibernate in this particular area. Well, in terms of mammals, no, not really. So we don't have the temperatures extreme enough to get mammals to start hibernating, but we will see some of the insects that will go dormant. They'll go into a sort of state of, if you want to call it, hibernation. There will be some reptiles, so things like chameleons, they'll go into what's called estivation, so they slow right down and they spend the winter months concealed either in sort of a hole in the ground, or they'll go into sort of treed areas and just try and rest up there until it gets warm enough that they can be active. What else? Crocodiles sometimes do it. If water dries up, they'll find themselves a big muddy cave, and they'll kind of go inside there, and then they wait and they just control their breathing and their body temperature and their heart rate so that they don't consume too much energy, and they then wait until the water comes again in the summer. So there are a few of them, but in terms of mammals, no. So it doesn't get cold enough for the mammals. The warm-blooded animals are still able to survive fairly well, and there's still enough food in this area that they can survive through the winter. But it was interesting last year with the drought. The drought changed the dynamic slightly, and that's why we've seen very different sort of numbers of certain animals. So last year, because all the grass was gone, you found that there was very little space for rodents to be able to hide, which meant that the snake numbers as well as the owl numbers tended to be a lot less. The owls, I reckon, have all moved off to try find greener pastures, but this year, now with the grass getting longer, we've started to see snakes like the puff adders coming back again, as well as a lot more owl species. So it will also depend on how we go. If we get any more rain now towards the end of the summer, and whether the grass grows more, as to what will happen in the winter and what animals will be around and will go missing. Phyllis, you're wondering what the coldest it gets in South Africa. Well, South Africa is quite a big place, and towards the western side of South Africa it can get very, very cold, and also up into the Drakensberg Mountains. There you can sometimes have days that are about, I would say, minus 10, minus 11 degrees centigrade on a regular basis, which is very, very cold. Whereas here in the area that we're in the low veld of South Africa, in the northeastern corner, very, very seldom will it ever go below zero. So a really, really cold day for us here would be 0 degrees centigrade. So it's about minus 30, I think, in Fahrenheit. And that would be really spectacularly cold, but it's very seldom that it goes to that. Our average winter temperature is normally about 10 degrees here where we are currently, but the problem with here is that it's very deceptive. Everybody always kind of thinks that 10 degrees is not so bad, but when you are driving around in a vehicle with no windows or windscreen, the wind chill factor is very, very cold, and that's what gets most people. So I've had people that have come from even Alaska who, when I say the temperature, say not too bad, and then we go on the morning drive and they're absolutely frozen. So it just shows you that, wind chill is the biggest problem that we face out here. Right, we're going to carry on and try and see if we can get into these riverbed systems and where we can find a little bit of water and see what's happening around that. And while we do that, let's go across to Brent Smith, who's flapping his flowing locks and gallivanting around the bush.
Well, yes, of course, I have flowing locks. I don't have a schoolboy haircut like Tristan. But well done to Aaron and Cedar Point. You are indeed correct. 11,000 kilograms, 11 tons, which is about 24,000 pounds. And it was from southern Angola. Now, I'll give you an idea. This thing was a beast. Now, your average Kruger elephant, remember, I'm 190, so I'm just under 2 meters. So your average Kruger elephant, so that's probably, where's me, I'm there. Your average Kruger elephant's about 4 meters at the shoulder, a big bull. Now that one from southern Angola, if my brain is still working, which hopefully it is, was just under 5 meters. So, I mean, imagine how big that elephant was. So, and it was from a very interesting area, southern Angola. Now, of course, Angola went through many, many years of civil war. And one of the problems with a lot of wars that happened, well, war's bad everywhere, but in Africa is, whoops, nearly fell over, is that the fact it's a lot of guerrilla warfare. So there was a lot of landmines that were laid, and generally in sort of traditional armies, landmines are laid and there's a plan and there's a structure, and so if your own troops are moving through, you can pull out, okay, we laid these landmines in the zigzag, whatever, and you can walk through the minefield safely. But with a lot of those sort of bush wars and guerrilla warfare, a lot of those landmines were just sort of put everywhere. So one of the big problems that faces the elephants of that area is landmines. Now, it also happened in southern Mozambique. So for the first couple of years that the Ellies started moving through there, they were losing feet and trunks and all sorts of stuff. But it took about 3 or 4 years for them to actually recognize the smell of what a landmine smells like. And there's some incredible stuff done by a professor called Dr. Mike Chase up in Botswana and in that whole area, because those elephant populations move through Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and into Angola. And you watch the elephant paths and even their feeding patterns. So in an area where there's no landmines, they're here, they're just all over the place. As soon as they get into a minefield, they go single file and they'll actually work their way through the minefield. Now there's another very interesting thing that's happening in Angola. There's a species of giant rat that occurs sort of from the Zambezi River north, in the Miombo and Savannah biomes. So maybe we might see one when we're in Kenya. And they are massive. I mean, they're the size of a Jack Russell. But they've actually been able to train those giant rats to sniff out landmines, and that's one of the animals they use to try to remove all those landmines after Civil War. And there's a picture I saw when I was reading up on it. It's incredible. Can you imagine there's a guy walking with a giant rat in a harness, walking through the minefield. Now, of course, they are incredible sense of smell, hearing, they're very, very in tune. And so they use the rats to mark, and then obviously the mine clearing teams come afterwards and dig them out and try safely dispose of them. Fortunately, we don't have any landmines here, apart from the pile of elephant dung. And it is not looking good on the leopard front. I have not seen a track, but we shall keep checking. Now, I've heard Tingana's been in the wars, apparently beat up quarantine as well recently, so it is quite an interesting time, because I think one of Tingana's biggest problems is his territory is actually too big for him to safely manage it. So every time he's in the south, someone sneaks in the north, and every time he's in the north, someone sneaks in from the west. So it's quite interesting. Speaking of other interesting things, and I know it's one of Jamie's favorite animals, she's sitting with some pachyderms.
Sitting with pachyderms who are really truly giving me a welcome back treat. What a spectacular sighting this has been. Just a moment earlier actually reminded me of just how quietly elephants can walk. I was sitting quite contentedly on the dam wall watching the other elephants that we'd seen earlier, and all of a sudden I looked behind me and there was this massive matriarch standing. You can see her now, she's the one getting out of the mud. Oh, look at them. Anyway, she was looming over us as if to say, do you mind? You are blocking the way. But I just moved out of her way, and she's quite contentedly led her family to exactly the same mud wallow, and they are having the best time, rolling about in the thick mud. This is obviously a really truly preferred patch for them, and this is where I saw Fang's herd last, also playing in this exact same mud wallow. And it's been interesting, and I know we always talk about it. I know Tristan's been talking about the drought, and it's always interesting for us when we're on leave to see how things have changed, especially when we've gone for 3 weeks. And it's interesting to see just how much bigger that mud wallow's got in the time that we've been gone. It has grown tremendously. So a naturally made pan that, come the next rainy season, will fill up once again. Make sure they get their backs covered. Look at the one that's still in the wallow. It's got one leg out. Oh, down again. Back in. I love watching the way that elephants do this. I always find it fascinating. Craig, I think the elephants have changed my plans for today. I don't think we're going to get to Cheetah Plains. We'll see. We'll see how things go. I've just been enjoying myself far too much to want to move. And they are my favourite animal to sit and watch. They really are. An elephant is never boring. They're always doing something, and they exude such a tremendous sense of contentment that one gets with a peaceful elephant sighting. Although I have to confess, I did think she was going to charge us when she loomed up behind us on the dam wall. I thought she might decide that we really were just obstructing her completely. Look at you guys. How's that? People would pay millions. Okay, maybe not millions. Let's not exaggerate. People would pay lots of money to come and enjoy a spa treatment like this, and the elephants get it for absolute free, coating their skin in this mud. I've just realized something as well. This is where I did my last drive before I went on leave. Elephants playing in this mud wallow. How strange is that? Almost like it fits together in a completely sort of smooth transition. There's the big girl. She is monumentally pregnant. No wonder she was so thoroughly upset with me. Look, you can actually see the bulge. Elephants carry their pregnancies quite high, and it's only towards the sort of the end of their gestation period that the pregnancy will show lower down. I think she is very, very pregnant. It's hot. She's probably a bit grumpy. Look, there's somebody who just doesn't want to go. There's always that one family member that gets left behind and just wants the fun to carry on. Hey boy, you're gonna get left behind. Also, gives you a really good example of actually just how well elephants are able to navigate certain types of terrain. And what I mean by that is never underestimate an elephant, because it can go pretty much anywhere a human being can go on two legs. I don't mean the elephant would go on two legs. I mean, if you could get there without climbing, an elephant can get there too. I mean, you can imagine how slippery that mud is. I thought she was going to come back behind us and do the same thing the other way. I was going to say, I don't think her tolerance would extend to having to repeat herself a second time to me. Okay, we're going to have to go round. There's definitely no turning round on this dam wall. The nice thing about Treehouse is that it's also one of the water holes. Treehouse Dam will keep its water for a long time. I'm laughing because Rebecca came up with a genius idea for a link. But I've moved on from that train of thought. But she said somebody else who can navigate terrain, difficult terrain very well, is Tristan, and that perhaps I should send you across to him.
Well, I'm not so sure, Jamie. I'm a bit of a klutz when it comes to walking around. I tend to trip over my own feet, so navigating difficult terrain is quite tough for me as well. But I think VM would be the perfect candidate to negotiate terrain. He's got his wildebeest roots, and he's able to be quite agile through a lot of the bush. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier, is what we wanted to check, is all these kind of muddy wallows, trying to just see if there's been any sign of anything. We're also trying to check these drainage lines for a specific purpose. I'm trying to see if there's any sign of Karula anywhere around here, just to see if maybe she's been skirting around us through these sort of thicker riverbed areas where it's tough to see tracks because we don't spend that much time driving around here. But this area has been completely devoid of anything. The only thing that's been here has probably been elephants yesterday, and you can see the elephants have had an absolute ball here. So while they're not drinking this water, they are splashing everywhere. So if you look at all of this vegetation, it is covered in mud. So this would have been when the elephants were standing, they would have taken trunkfuls of water and they're throwing it on their belly and throwing it on their ears, and that's why this mud is just being sprayed over all of these sections here. So you can see that they've been having a really good time in this area. And in fact, yesterday morning I had Ellies that we walked past here, and they did utilize this a little bit, but not very much. It's not as much as I would have thought. I was also looking for any signs of little froggies, but I don't see any signs of them either, or terrapins, which is quite strange. I would have thought we would have seen some terrapins scuttling into this little pan as we went. So no too much there. It might be because also that particular waterhole is really in the sort of sun, and so it's not a great place for a lot of the animals to spend time. It's far too hot. The other reason why I'm here, which is probably the most important, is to try and see if I can find Beyonce. So for those of you who missed who Beyonce is, Beyonce was my leopard tortoise that I found yesterday morning. She was all burnt by a fire and she had this sort of white shell with these burn marks. So I'm trying to see if she's still here and if she's moving, because yesterday she didn't look very good. She was kind of, every time we went close to her, she would just sit there, and then a big herd of elephants came past and they were all around her. So I'm hoping that none of the elephants stood on her, because she was quite well camouflaged. And so we're going to go and check around and see if maybe she's still here and is still hanging around. And she was at the next mud wallow on from where we are now. She would have been in that area. Now I'm sorry that I'm turning my back to you guys, but it's just that where we're walking, as you can see, is littered with fallen over trees. So walking backwards for VM or myself is going to be a dangerous affair. And we were talking about negotiating tough terrain. This is about as tough as it gets, because at the end of the day you've got to be careful where you're walking. You don't want to fall over here. Like stumps like that would be your downfall for sure. But it is a beautiful afternoon. It's very, very warm. I'm sure a lot of the animals are still in the shade, and as we start moving, we're going to see the activity period sort of increase, and we'll start to see animals coming out a little bit more and trying to kind of see what's going on and trying to sort of get into more open sections, and that will then, it will become a lot easier for us with animals. And also the insects will start to slow down a bit. At the moment, as we walk, they're just exploding out everywhere. But I have found something quite interesting. So what we have here is little balls of very, very, very dry dung. Now, you might wonder what this is. This is in fact produced by a scrub hare. Alright, and so the reason why it looks this way is because scrub hares, unfortunately, they don't have the same gut system as something like an impala or a giraffe that's able to regurgitate and re-chew and maximize the nutrients from what they get. But because they are grass feeders, especially in the winter months, it really becomes very, very difficult for them to find enough food. And so what they do is they eat, defecate, and then they re-eat what they've defecated and reconsume it. And so that's why it comes out this very white, dehydrated sort of look about it. It's because it's been processed through their gut twice. So it's actually dung that has gone through the system 2 times. Now, what you can use this for, which is quite cool, is if you go out, and you may have seen some of us carrying little ash bags or little bottles that we can test the wind. So if you don't have one of those handy and you're in the bush, you get some of the scrub hare dung, and if you break it up, because of how fine it is, there you go, you can see, look at how fine that is. So it's absolutely been chewed to its smallest piece, and if you break it up and you let it go, it is a perfect indicator of the wind, and it will then drift on. So you can utilize this to check wind direction, which is really cool. So we'll carry on and hang on to one of them as we go, because we don't find them all that often when we're walking around. Alright, so we're going to carry on looking for Beyonce and see if maybe she's here. She should be not too far away. And while we do that, let's go across to Brent Smith, who is just as much a diva as Beyonce is.
Hi! We're back! I'm rushing. I've heard something on the radio. It's a track. Jamie, I'm going to come give you a hand. It's tracks for a female leopard around Treehouse Dam, and who else could that be but the Queen? Hopefully she's decided to grace us with her appearance. Of course, Jamie is trying to find her before me, and it sounds like a little female Xongile's tracks, probably not Krula, but anyway, we still got to go there. Let's go see if we can. The more of us looking, the better chance we have at finding a leopard, of course. Now, I've checked Leadwood Road, which is another favourite spot if you haven't seen Krula in a while for her to pop out. And alas, there's just elephant tracks. And the Ellies have been really busy. Now, of course, Leadwood is one of my favourite trees, and there's a very big Leadwood, and that gives this road its name. And of course, it is an expired Leadwood. Now, dead Leadwoods can stay standing for over 100 years after they have died, and there we go. This is the big dead Leadwood that lends its name to the road. Now, of course, this is quite a popular one. There's a squirrel nest in it. Rollers nested in it last year. And Birchall starling nested in it this year. And of course, even though it's dead, it's still home to many creatures. It is a beautiful tree. Oh, so many monotonous narks around. Okay, let's go see if we can help Djuma. So they're heading towards Treehouse Dam from the south. That's good news. Little Xongile, of course, is tie with Inkanyeni as my favorite leopard. Female leopard, that is. And Tristan was actually telling me that while we were away, Kunyuma made an appearance on Torchwood and had a fight with quarantines. That's quite interesting. The brotherly bond is definitely done. Well, while we rush towards where those tracks are, let's go to Jamie, who's hot on their trail.
Hot on the heels of a leopard I think is Xongile. Sorry, somebody's talking to me at the same time. This is exciting. I really want to see these leopards again. So we've got fresh leopard tracks going straight to where the elephants were. I've just said to Craig, wouldn't it be funny if we've been sitting with them the whole time and completely looking past a leopard? Okay, copy. I'm just checking to see whether these tracks go south or north into this block. Craig, can you do me a favor? Do you see that marula tree on the other side of the drainage? Just, if you could zoom in for me. My binoculars are somewhere in this vehicle. A little bit up a little bit. Is that a leopard? In the tree. Sorry, Brent, please say that again. No, am I imagining it? No. No leopard there. I'm making things up. Yeah, maybe come along the fire break. Just check that they haven't gone south again. Alrighty. No leopard in that tree. False alarm, everybody. I just had this idea in my head that we'd been staring at the elephants and that the leopard was right there watching us the entire time. In fact, I still feel that. It's just a question of which tree she's in, or if she's in the shade somewhere on the ground, which is going to make things very tricky for us, because they do disappear so marvelously into this long grass. So I'm just going to meander very, very slowly and keep checking. I think it's Xongile. I think those tracks are a little bit small for Karula, and it makes sense from what Tristan was telling me where she was last seen. But it would be lovely if it was Karula, because I know that she hasn't been seen for quite a while. I'm sure she's off mating somewhere with a male. That would be my guess. I don't know for certain, but it would be very nice to catch up with the queen once again. Now, I am going to do some serious searching for a tiny spotted creature. In the meantime, Tristan is on foot with a very large spotted creature.
We are indeed, and this is a very special occasion because Wildy and I have found this little giraffe that is in this sort of shade of this area, and normally we don't see them too much on foot in this particular section. We often spot them in quarantine, so very, very nice to be able to be sitting with this giraffe. And you can see that that giraffe is probably just as hot as we are. It's found itself a beautiful shady area, and Rexon was saying to me it looks like one of those dogs when it's very hot and it's kind of sitting panting. That's exactly how it is. The same thing with that giraffe. It's just trying to ruminate in the shade and take it very easy. You'll find once the sun starts to dip in maybe about an hour's time, they'll then start coming out. Now I'm pretty sure there's more than one. It's a female that we see there, so we know because she's got those very narrow ossicones, and I don't see any others, but generally female giraffe will be together. So maybe if we go around the corner there might be some more of them that are also hanging around in the shade. But this is the advantage that a ruminating animal has over something like an elephant. So we've been seeing elephants this afternoon, and they've all been moving around and trying to feed and still sustain their bodies and gain nutrients. But for a giraffe, because they have that ability to regurgitate, like the scrub hare eats its own dung, the giraffe is able to regurgitate from the stomach and chew. It means that it can spend hot periods of the day, like now, in shade and regurgitate, gain energy, but actually not expend too much energy in the hot sun, whereas the elephants are having to move around so much during the hot sun that they have to have special adaptations like their ears to be able to deal with that, which is quite cool. Now, I did look for Beyonce. Unfortunately, Beyonce is gone. She is not there anymore, which I suppose is a good thing, because it means that she's, at the end of the day, is moving and is just fine. So maybe she was just hot yesterday morning and she was quite happy to be around all the elephants and at the waterhole, but I checked all around. There was no sign of her anywhere in this area, so I think she's moved off. And it would probably make sense, because where she was, even though she was very camouflaged, for a tortoise she would have been very dehydrated by today, because she would have been right in direct sunlight, and it gets very, very hot if you're in a shell, I would imagine. So luckily for her, she's been able to move and find... So Rebecca says she's a career woman and a traveller, which I suppose is quite true. Very, very clever, Rebecca. So, sorry Rebecca, I was so busy laughing at you that I didn't actually hear what your question was, but I know it's something to do with a giraffe. Rebecca says I should be laughing with her. Cheetah, you're asking how long is a giraffe pregnancy last for? Well, it lasts 16 months, so it's quite a long pregnancy that they have. Obviously, they're a big animal. There's lots of very specific adaptations that they have, that they need to develop when they're still in the womb. So, you know, this long neck, this very, very different skeletal structure, the way that all the organs are positioned, that all takes time to develop. So, because they're such big animals, 16 months is how long they are pregnant for, and that's why it takes so long. You'll find with things like rhino, elephant, all the big animals, they have long gestation periods to allow these babies to develop and get big enough. Also, because when they are born, if very small things are hunted quite extensively, so it's better, the larger they can be when they come out, the better it is for that animal. The interesting thing is that a hippo is very different. So even though a hippo is one of the larger animals out here, with giraffe and elephants and buffalo and those kind of things, their gestation period is much shorter than all the others. So if we look at a hippo, it is half the amount of time that a giraffe gestates for, and you would think, but that's crazy. The reason is twofold. One is because when a hippo is born, it has very few predators in the water. There's only really crocodiles that they have to worry about, but generally because of the pod, there is enough protection that they can keep crocodiles at bay. So that is the one reason for it. The second reason is that because they spend so little time on land, is that they don't have to worry about predators on land, so they can be much smaller than what you'd see on a rhino calf. So when a hippo calf is born, it's much smaller than what a rhino calf is, and that's because it spends so little time on land in its first 3 months. It's mostly in water and just around the water, that it doesn't have to worry about lion and leopard and hyenas and those kind of things as much, so it can afford to be much smaller, which is really cool. But I hear some francolins calling in the distance. I wonder what's disturbed them. Like I say, there's lots of things that move around here, and even if it could be an impala or a bushbuck that walks around here, they could potentially disturb a little flock of francolins, and francolins like to make a lot of noise. You can also see that we've got quite a few of these spotted jokers flying around. I'm hoping that one's going to land for me. There we go, there's one that's just landed on its branch. They are beautiful butterflies, and you can see how it's fanning its wings like that. It'll also be just helping to cool this little butterfly down. Now, I was saying earlier that even though there are a lot of butterflies, it's very difficult to actually get them on camera in the afternoons because of the heat. They tend to be far more active. The best time to actually look for butterflies is in the mornings, sort of mid-morning, when it hasn't gotten that hot just yet and the butterflies are still a little bit lethargic, and then they sit on the grass and you can get right up close to them and view them really nicely. But that one's being very cooperative, which is very thankful. And look at that coloration when it opens. Now, it's interesting with butterflies, you see that when they close their wings when they're sitting, the reason why the underside of their body is always a different color is generally for camouflage. So that spotted joker, when its wings are flat, you notice that there is this bright orange, but as soon as it comes up, it's a very pale tawny color, which will blend in with the grass really well. So they actually camouflage very, very well, and that's why the top side and underside of butterfly wings generally is very different. Right, so we're going to carry on, see what else we can find, and while we do that, I believe Jamie's still on the tracks of Xongile, which will be very fresh, because I drove those areas this morning and there was no sign. So if they're top of my tracks, hopefully Jamie will get lucky this afternoon.
They are so fresh. They're on top of every single bird track, every other track on that road, vehicle tracks, everything. He was sorry, everybody. The last tracks I had were just where the mound is. Sorry, everybody. Aubrey's here to help us. Brent is moving into the area to help us. I don't think I will ever live it down if Brent gets here and finds her before I do. He will bounce into camp tonight, full of the joys of spring, if he finds them before we do. Come on, Craig. We've got to find them. Let's just check here. I say them. It's just Xongile as far as I can tell. But we're going to find her. She's here somewhere close. She probably got scared by those elephants as well. Just check here quickly. No. Okay. Back to step 1, to Treehouse Dam. So much for my plans for the afternoon. They do have a tendency to go awry. For those of you that have joined us, by the way, welcome on our live safari. We're searching for a 14-month-old female leopard cub. I assume it's her. And you can send through any questions that you'd like to ask, and you can do that using the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. Okay, Craig. Xongile. She's going to be looking to find herself familiar spots. I don't know whether to say this is good news or not good news, but I'm going to send you over to Brent, who hasn't found Xongile, but I'm sure is going to be hot on the trail of joining us to help out.
Well, yes, we're helping. We had, Jamie asked us to check the boundary. Okay, we're just having a little bit of an audio issue, so I'm just waiting to find out. We're all good. We're April away. Sorry about that, but I mean, we are live in the middle of Africa. These things do happen, and of course we have our incredible tech department who have the patience of saints in dealing with all these little problems. But so, Jamie asked us to check the southern firebreak, which we have, to make sure she hasn't done a disappearing act back to Little Gowrie. So I know Jamie's around there somewhere, so we're just going very slowly down towards Treehouse, just nice and hot now, so there's a possibility she could be up in a tree. So I'm looking for that elegant dangling tail, hopefully. And hopefully her brother's around as well. That's how much they've grown in 3 weeks for a leopard. That age, they grow an incredible amount. And you can see the zigzagging whenever you see someone seen a track. You zigzag. These are very nice tracks. Very fresh tracks. Now these are the ones Jamie initially saw. So she just went and checked a little bit further to the east. We checked further to the south. Hi, Sarah. Sarah's wondering, why are the leopards so difficult to find at the moment? Well, I think Karula's probably mating, so she's wandering off, and she could be, as I say, up to 20 kilometers away. And after the late rain, we've had a burst of grass, and so they're a little bit harder to spot, because if they lie down flat, they just disappear. Okay, there's still tracks there. Oh no, there's tracks. That's interesting. There's hyena tracks, but that's not what I saw. So I thought I saw a track going the opposite direction. Let's double check. That's an older track there. So sorry, the bush is thick, the grass is long, and so they can disappear. There's actually two. She did a little turnaround. Now, the exciting thing is, Jamie said these tracks are really fresh, and they're even on top of the ant lions that have been moving under the ground. So they're still there. Now, with Xongile, she could be lying right next to the road. Hi, Cedar. Cedar's wondering, is tracking elephants, animals fun for me? Yes, it is. I love tracking. It is one of the pure joys in this world. And leopard are one of the more difficult ones to track, just because there's only one. Often they're solitary, so there's only one set of tracks. It's not like a pride of lions, and they're also quite small. I mean, Xongile probably weighs about 30 kilograms, so less than 100 pounds, and just a tiny bit of hard soil, and you can just faintly see a track. And okay, there's no tracks here, so I think Jamie's probably right. She's headed down into the little drainage line above that flows into Treehouse. But I'm going to go back to the last tracks just now. I just want to have a look. Now, this is one of their favorite areas, and their moms left them in this area many, many times. And pretty much almost every marula tree here I've actually seen Hosanna or Xongile in, as they chased each other up and down and around the bend. Ah, there's more tracks here. So go again with that message. Sorry. Okay, copy, thanks. Ooh. I'm not going to say what that was about, it's a secret. Ooh. And look at that, that's quite an interesting bird there. Just watch my finger there. Is it still there? It's still there. There we go, a little bit up. And center frame. Come down a little bit. Look, oh, a little bit down, 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 down. So there we go. Here we go, look at that. So the cuckoos are still here. There's a Diderick's cuckoo. Oh, pretty, off it goes. So with that late rain, there's still quite a lot of caterpillars around, so the cuckoos are going to stay a little bit longer. Now, 30-minute fitness is wondering, will Xongile survive without her mother? Yes, she's old enough now. The youngest I've ever heard of a leopard surviving without an adult became independent when its mother got killed by lions, and that was 9 months. And that leopard survived perfectly fine, made it to adulthood. It was a young male, but 9 months, that's incredible. So normally female leopards will become independent from their mothers a little bit younger than males. So around this age is about the time. What are we now? We're in April, so she's what? February, she was a year. So 13 months, 14 months, it's about the time that a female leopard would become independent from her mother regardless. Now, the other thing is, and you probably find another reason why Karula's been a bit scarce, that the female leopards will give away a core part of their territory to their female offspring. And I'm really hoping that Xongile becomes the dominant leopard in this area. I think Karula will probably move a little bit further to the north. There's a bit of a vacuum there after Tingana killed, what was her name? Oh, I can't remember her name now. I'll come back to me in a second. Shilova. So after Tingana killed Shilova, so there's a bit of a gap for a female leopard in that area, and I think it's more likely that Karula will move into that area. I mean, she could be in the north at the moment. She could be sitting in that area now. So it's one of those really interesting things. And animal dynamics are always incredible to watch as they play out, and that's one of the wonderful things about being out here almost every day. Well, you guys are out here with one of us every day, and we're able to watch the full story and see what happens. Now, I do have some good news, but I'm not going to ruin the surprise. But I think I'm going to make my way towards the west and try not to drive straight into the sun. We'll cut across to the north as well, see what's happening. It's been quite fun. I've driven a lot of Djuma, but I haven't been in the north or the east. Okay. Woo. Got some sand in my brakes. Hang on. There we go. That should do it. Now remember, if you have any questions for us, hashtag Safari Live is the best way to do it. Now of course it's quite warm and we're just ambling along, you know, we've got the aircon on, so when I want the air conditioner I just speed up a little bit. But as someone who I'm sure is feeling the heat is Tristan, so let's go see how hot he is on foot.
Well, it is quite warm, Brent. It's very hot, but that's why we're trying to stick in these areas with lots of shade. And it's quite interesting. We were busy walking along and we saw a vehicle in front of us, and Aubrey was there, and up in the tree was Xongile. So that's where Jamie's off to, is not too far from where we are. So we bumped into her as well. It would have been nice if we had found her on foot, but generally we were a little bit too late. We were 5 minutes too late before we got out. So we've just left the area, allowed all the vehicles to come in, and we're going to carry on our walk and see what else we can find. Now I'm just trying to see where we're going to go from here. Viam, I don't think we're going to be able to go this way. We're going to have to go around because there's no way to get through that area. And this is how it is in these sort of drainage line thickets, is that you do a lot of back and forth where you kind of zigzag, and the best way to do it is to try and find a path that either Ellies or buffalo or hippos have made that you can then follow. Now, we have been talking a lot about the sort of terrain that we're in and the fact that there are elephants and buffalo that spend a lot of time in these areas. So what I think we should do, and we were discussing the giraffe's digestive system, and we should talk about scrub hares. So I think we're going to have a closer look at all the dungs this afternoon. As we're going to move along, I'm going to try to find dungs for all these different animals. We can discuss the differences between them and how we know what their digestive system is because of them. But before we do that, Viam, there's a beautiful caterpillar here. A few caterpillars actually. You see them? There we go. There's 1, 2. So you can see they're quite big now. So these are those Acrea caterpillars that we've been following all summer long, and we've sort of had 2 batches of them. We had the first ones which were around sort of January time, and then went into February, and then we got another batch just after the rains a few weeks ago. So it seems like those are now growing out, and these are the ones we're seeing. And I'm still not 100% sure which Acrea it is, but it is definitely one of the Acreas that is there. You can see those little spikes which makes them quite easily identifiable. And they love these Wiltherias. Everywhere you go on a Wiltheria, we seem to be finding these Acrea caterpillars, and the Acrea butterflies this summer have been incredible. We've seen lots of different species of them fluttering about all over the place. It's been really quite something to watch. But you can see also the damage that they can do to these leaves. They've eaten mass amounts of this plant, especially this leaf over here has been absolutely attacked. Now the one problem with being in these drainage lines is that it is nice and shady, but there is no wind inside here, so it gets very muggy. So I think what we should do is try and get to a more sort of higher bank where there is shade and at least get a bit of a breeze, otherwise we might die of heat inside here. Right, so I can hear Jamie is somewhere close by, so I believe she's with Xongile, so let's not waste any time and go across to her while we continue our dung quest.
I am indeed with Xongile, and how lovely it is to see her after a 3-week absence. Hello, baby. Hello, little girl. Oh, shame, you're looking a little hungry, my girl. Hold on a minute, everybody. I'm just going to get us into a nice position so that all 3 vehicles can squeeze in and their guests can all have a chance to see her. Hello, little girl. There we go. Hi, Xongi. Oh, okay, everybody wants to come around this way. Fair enough, I suppose. The sun is going to be beautiful. And there we have it. Little Xongile. I knew those tracks were very, very fresh, but I didn't realize she was going to have walked so far. So for all of you that are joining us for the first time, Xongile is, as I said, 14 months old. And the camera's about to shake, and that's not Craig's fault. It's mine. Sorry, I just had my foot on the brake. Just take it off. And for the first time in her life properly, she's found herself all on her own. I've heard she's been separated from Hasana for a while, and her mom hasn't been back to her for quite a while as well. And I have to say that she's looking very, very hungry. Oh, little girl. It's okay. Shame, baby. Your first time experiencing this. Hello, girl. You can see how incredibly comfortable she is, walking right behind Craig. And there she goes, popping out on the other side. She looks so tiny to be all on her own. It's a tough life for a young leopard at this age. She's not yet ready to be independent from her mum, but it is about the right age for a female leopard with cubs to start coming back into estrus once again. We've already seen Karula mating with Tingana weeks ago, and I think that's probably, I'm guessing that's what's happened now. But it does happen. Sometimes they lose each other. I'm just going to let Tax go ahead. Go ahead, Tax. Go for it. But it does happen that they lose each other. And I've seen Xongile get lost before, and that's why she's patrolling all of these areas, the treehouse dam route, all the way to the Mawati. This is an area that she knows so well and has spent so much time with her mum here, that I think she's just searching for them in all the familiar places that she knows. But she's also, look, she is perfectly capable at this stage, I would say, of surviving for quite an extended period without her mum, just because she can hunt. Now, Liesel, you want to know when Xongile will start mating? Around about, sorry everybody, we just have to, we're all taking our turns. We've been allowed to go ahead. We're going to let them go ahead for a bit. Oh, I might be able to squeeze a view for you. I might, if I stop here. Liesel, sorry, you want to know when Xongile will start mating? Around about 2. Obviously, every individual is different, but that's the point at which they start to have their first estrus cycles. The first ones, the first ones are usually false estruses, though they generally don't result in a pregnancy straight away. It's the same as we've seen with the Nkuhuma female, the youngest lioness. It's just the sort of their bodies getting into that, or preparing for that role. And it's a whole new big step. So we've still got another, I would say probably even a year before Xongile starts to think about mating. And then, of course, she'll be fully independent. That's one of the signs that she's become completely and fully independent and away from her mum. Oh, dearie me. Sorry, everybody. Got to do some squeezing. Now, Mohammed, can you see her there, Craig? Through the gap? No. Sorry. Now, Mohammed, you want to know if she's considered an adult? No. She's still, I guess you could call her a sub-adult. I still think of her as a cub, but that's because we've sort of watched them grow up. So she's not quite an adult yet. She'll only be an adult once she reaches sexual maturity and once she starts mating and has established herself a territory. She's still, at 14 months old, she's still completely dependent upon her mum. She can survive for a little bit longer. She's old enough to hunt for herself, but she's not yet ready to leave her mother's company completely, which is why she's looking a little skittish and a little skinny. And Gremlin's General, what a fantastic name. Good afternoon to you. Gremlin's General, you want to know how long can she survive without eating exactly? She's tiny, so she probably has less resources to draw upon. I would say without eating anything. What is she doing? Sorry, I'm seesawing backwards and oh, she's moving again. We'll just have to wait our turn, everybody. Sorry. It's just playing leapfrog until we get a chance to see her properly. Oh, she's going to lie down in the road. Okay. In that case, shall we risk a flat tire? Oh no, hold on. Orbs is going to move for us. 3 weeks, give or take, without eating anything. But she is eating. She will be eating. She'll be catching herself small things. We've seen Vitomi eat tortoises to survive. So she will be eating. Sorry, I'm just moving, waiting for Tax to see if he wants to move. No, he doesn't. Okay. Oh, he does. Confusion. Okay, let's go. Quickly, snatch an opportunity. There we go. There we go. There's a beautiful girl. So she is eating. She'll be eating things like scrub hares, tortoises, terrapins, any insects as well, although it's a pity that there's no sort of emerging termites that she could feed off, because that's often quite a useful food source. Go ahead, Tax. just going to let Tax go in front. All right, we're going to go catch up. We're going to see whether or not Xongile gets herself into a nice, good position. While we do that, I think it's time to send you back over to Brent to find out where he is and what he's up to.
Well, of course my plans have been dashed, but it's not the queen, it's the princess. So, Tristan mentioned that lions were quite close to Sydney's dam around the Buffelshoek boundary. So I'm going to go see if they've maybe meandered back down towards the west. And if not, I'm just going to check the whole of the northern boundary, because I mean, we don't actually know where Cuckoo is, so she could very easily have gone north. And we'll just go see if there's any tracks of anything. And I haven't seen Djuma in a while as well, and that's always a good spot to look for him along the northern boundary. And that's our new plan. And of course there's lots of wonderful things to see as we go. Oh, it is very bright at the moment, but we'll soon be heading, putting our back to the sun and heading to the northeast. Now this little section here is a bit of a joke amongst all of us. We call it the Bermuda Triangle. So from Sandy Patch and Impala Road through to the gate. So it's the corner of Djuma. And it seems to swallow up animals, or they just streak straight through it. Although we have had some very good wild dog sightings in this area. Now they are, of course, for those of you who don't know, my favourite animal, and I'm always hoping that the wild dogs are around. Now what are we now? April. So, and they've just finished mating. They would have finished mating last month, and from now, if we find dogs, we just got to hope they find a nice den site on Djuma. Because they'll be already now searching for a den. They'll be excavating and marking out a couple of potential den sites. Now, there's a couple of things that influence where a wild dog's going to den, and one of them is lions. And as we know, they are not friends. And sadly, we got to see how not friends they were live when one of the Styx lionesses killed that wild dog puppy right in front of us. It was very sad. But so, depending on your lion movements, you'll see that the dogs will try find a den site in an area where the lions aren't too thick, and there's lots of impala about. Now, they will move dens normally about twice, sometimes 3 times, while the pups are still in the den, and that of course is because of all the fleas. Or the lions find their den. Hyenas, they don't mind so much. Leopards, they don't mind at all. Or they do mind them, they try to eat them all the time and kill them. And I've seen well, we've obviously seen them chase leopards a lot, but I've actually seen a wild dog pack kill a female leopard before, and that was very, very brutal. I mean, they killed her in a matter of seconds and just ripped her apart. And I've got a photo somewhere in my archives of just this wild dog sitting with a big patch of leopard's fur, a big, almost not a square, but a big piece of torn skin. There was a leopard that we didn't see often, and that was up in Botswana, along the Kondo River. Magnificent part of the world, that. Ooh, let's quickly go across to Jamie.
Alright, so we've made it all the way to Cheetah with Xongile, who is on a mission. And as you can see, Cheetah is not uninhabited. In fact, there are 3 massive buffalo bulls. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to get us a bit closer quickly, because if something does happen, it might happen relatively fast. It's very common to see young leopards stalk things like buffalo, even though there's absolutely no way. Here she goes, look, she's watching them. There's absolutely no way on earth that she would be able to take on an adult male buffalo. I mean, she probably weighs 30 kilograms, less at the moment, which is just over 60 pounds. A big buffalo bull can weigh just under a ton. So she's definitely not doing it for feeding purposes, but she will be doing it just to practice her skills, to learn different techniques, to experience the way in which the world works. And I know that Brent's told the story many times of, I think it was Kunuma, it must have been Kunuma, it sounds like something Kunuma would have done, climbing down a tree and smacking a buffalo on the bottom with his paw, and then being chased up a tree by the buffalo. I've seen Xongile stalk them. We've seen Hosana, her brother, stalk elephants before. Again, obviously there's not a chance that they would ever have any chance of actually killing one. Bless you, Craig. Shame I could see Craig working so hard to try and hold that one back. When you gotta sneeze, you gotta sneeze. Hey, girl. Alright, I don't think she is actually going to stalk these buffalo, so I think that gives us the opportunity to get a little bit closer. Oh, sorry. Hat in the way. Now, I'm not sure if it's me or me, and I do apologize if I'm getting your name wrong. And you want to know whether or not Karula will still feed the cubs while she's mating? No. Generally what happens, and I mean that's one of the reasons I'm going to try and get the buffalo as well. Can you see both there, Craig? Should be able to. That's one of the reasons why we actually believe that Shadow has a slightly lower success rate, or a very low success rate when it comes to raising cubs. That's my theory anyway. I suspect that it's, apart from the fact that she's on the sort of boundary of several different male territories, I think it's because she comes into estrus earlier. And when a female leopard comes into estrus or are ready to mate, they will follow the male around for 5 to 7 days. And they will essentially spend all of their time with that male. So they might eat, they might feed, but she won't stop and go back and fetch the cubs. It just doesn't happen. I think she actually might be a bit thirsty as well. She's been walking far from when Tristan saw her. When was she seen? Yesterday or the day before? Oh, she's seen something she wants. It was yesterday, so she's been walking all day in the heat of the afternoon. Sorry, I just don't want to move until I've established which way she wants to go. She's, I think, listening to alarm calls, and I think she's hoping it's her mum. Shame, girl. She's trying desperately to find Karula. She doesn't really want to call too much because she doesn't want to make too much of a noise and draw attention to herself. If she goes in there, we are going to seriously struggle. Oh, she's going in there. Oh, Xongile. Oh, watch out there, Craig. Now, Miss Katie, you want to know if Xongile and Karula could share the same territory? No. They might... Okay. Okay, copy. I think I'm going to try... I'll see if I can get in here, otherwise I'm going to go in the Mawati. Sorry everybody. Aubrey thinks he might have heard a contact call. How amazing would that be if we could see the two reunited once again? I don't know, she heard something. Something attracted her attention. I'm gonna try and I don't think we're gonna manage. No. Let's try and get in this way. Oh, Miss Katie, sorry, I completely forgot I was answering your question. No, they won't share territory. They will have an overlapping boundary, potentially, in the same way that Karula does with Shadow and Karula does with Tundi. But leopards are by nature completely solitary, and they don't share, females do not share territories, males do not share territories. But it's fluid. So the boundary is fluid. If one is on the far western reaches of their territory, the other might move about in the opposite end of that territory, because there's nobody calling, there's nobody scent marking. Sorry guys, I have to just concentrate and try and find her. while we attempt to relocate mysterious Xongile, who's taken us into some very, very difficult area, let's go and see the end product of a buffalo's digestion, I think.
Well, yes, we do have the end product, and it's not a very pleasant affair. Luckily, this one is not too fresh, so it's all okay. You can see that the difference now between the scrub hare and this buffalo is that the scrub hare produces those little balls, which are what you would see in giraffe and impalas and those things, which I'll try and find a little bit later. But the buffalo tends to have a lot looser sort of stool, and the reason why that is particularly now in summer, that they eat so much grass, it has got so much moisture, as well as spending so much time in water, that they drink a lot, and it tends to mean that they end up getting a situation where their dung is a lot more sort of loose and ends up splattering more than actually forming piles. As we get into winter will change this. Winter will then start to get these kind of cow patties that form, so it becomes a lot more solid in the winter time when there's far less moisture in the grass. But if we have a look, I'm going to try and get some sort of tool to break it open. Now, I'm sure I've got... there we go, thanks. Yep. So we get a little stick. Let's get rid of all the grass, though. Now, if we break it open... There we go. So you can see this is actually from those buffalo that we saw, that you've been seeing from earlier today. But look at how fine this grass is. So it's not quite as fine as the scrub hares, and that's because the scrub hare's dental structure is a lot smaller, and it would have cut up those varying little bits a lot more, and because they eat it again, they tend to rechew it a lot more than what the buffalo does. But this has really been chewed very, very finely. There's not too much nutrients left in here, although there's still enough to allow for insects. Now you see there's a little beetle that is acting as though it's dead at this stage, but it's not, because it was moving just now. So those look like little shield bugs, and they're in here because they're processing this food that is still left over. So even though it's been through the digestive system of the buffalo and it's been rechewed and regurgitated and re-eaten again, there is still some nutrients left. And so small little beetles like that, you'll get dung beetles that will come in here. There's a few little termites that will come in, and there's even a little worm, which I can't see what it is. I wonder if it's not a maggot. Let's have a look here. There we go, just trying to show you. So it looks like a little maggot, and look how it's burrowing its way in. Isn't that incredible? That's amazing. It's really moving quite quickly through this dung, and I've lost it now, which is not ideal. But there was a little maggot that was moving around in there, and like I say, there's varying little flies and beetles that are all in here processing these little bits of grass. Now, if we go to an elephant dung, you'll find that it's even more alive with insects, and that's because the elephant's dung, they digest far less than what the buffalo does. So the buffalo is still quite effective, but not quite effective as the scrub hare is. Right, let's carry on. Enough of sitting over dung. It is quite pungent smelling when you're that close to it, when your nose is right in it. So let's not carry on with that. Let's rather see what else we can find. But that dung would have been from this morning sometime. And so you see what happens is also with aging of dung. So if we were walking along here and we'd come across that, we would know to be careful of buffalo, but not too concerned that they were right nearby, because with the sun being hot today, it's formed a sort of crust on the outside. It dries it very quickly, and then you end up with this crusty affair. And as soon as you break it open, then you see how moist it is inside, and you know that that is at least from this morning. Right, we're going to carry on. Like I say, I'll try and find some more dung and droppings, and while we do that, let's go across to Brent to just see if he's actually decided if he has a plan, or if he's just going to continue bumbling on this beautiful afternoon.
Well, we had a look around where the lions were, but it looks like they're still to the north. Hopefully they'll come back overnight. Now, of course, the lion dynamics are very interesting at the moment. Well, not so much the male dynamics, but the female dynamics, with that massive Torchwood pride moving in. And I think giving those Nkuhumas a really hard time. And so, traditionally, the Nkuhumas would be all the way down, all the way to the Kruger boundary, inside Buffelshoek and Torchwood. But now, with this Torchwood pride coming in from Kruger, and I think it's this 8 adult lionesses, so it's a big pride, and it's pushed the Nkuhumas further to the west, and I mean they've gone really far west in the last couple of months, and it's going to be interesting to see. But they've still got those cubs, and once those cubs reach adulthood, and the Nkuhuma pride will be a force to be reckoned with on their own. Now, I heard that there's one Birmingham boy on a buffalo carcass around Jacana. So I wonder whether the Nkuhumas might make their way towards that guy. What was that? Those are wild dog tracks. Hello, hello. That's exciting. And they look quite fresh. So the reason I know it's a wild dog and not a hyena is because of the shape. There are hyena tracks here as well. There's just a single dog track going off here. So, dam cam guys, keep a lookout because we're about opposite the dam cam at the moment. Now the reason I got out and walked a little bit is because it's still quite hot, and often those dogs, when they go flat, all you need to do is just put your foot on the ground and they lift their heads. But I think we're going to go around and back towards, change of plan again, towards the dam and towards camp. And of course lots of impala there, so always a great spot for the dogs to hunt. Puppies! Hopefully they've come to decide to come play. But it's not one of the big packs, or it could be, but I think this is more than likely one of the dispersal packs. It could have been this one. I'm not smelling dogs, so that's one of the few animals you can actually really track by scent. And if they'd passed through here in the last 20 minutes or so, and that really sort of damp, wet dog smell, but they're not old tracks. Okay, well, we carry on looking for dogs. Let's go back to the beautiful place.
The leopard that has chosen the perfect moment to completely vanish. Promise you there is a leopard there. She's just behind this tree and there she is. She's popped out. Thank you, girl. She's been almost as mobile as wild dogs this afternoon. Okay, not quite, that's a slight exaggeration, but she has been constantly moving, and you can see now as she's walking away from us that she could use a few square meals, to put it lightly. She really could use something to eat. She's very, very hungry. And you can see that she's been without Mum for quite a long time, judging by the condition that she's in. I'm not worried yet. I think she's going to be absolutely fine. She's proved time and time again that she can hunt for herself, so she'll be okay. But it is always a bit distressing to see a leopard cub that we've become, or any animal, but particularly when we've watched these cubs grow up, it's quite distressing to see her looking so hungry. Just let go, Aubrey, go ahead. And you can also see, those of you who've been watching, you'll be familiar with the places that we've been going to. From Treehouse Dam now into the Mulwati drainage. These are all places where we've had so many sightings of these leopard cubs in the past. And it's because she's searching all the sort of familiar areas. There she goes. I wonder if she's going to go up Battalier Road. And what she seems to be doing is actually walking from pan to pan. And I don't know if that's because, in other words, from water source to water source. I don't know if that's because she is just going to sort of familiar landmarks, or if she's actually actively associating water with food potential, which would make complete sense. She certainly would be bright enough to have made that connection. And perhaps even terrapins that she might like to eat. That was unfortunate. Forgotten how to drive, apparently, in my 3-week holiday. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Hubs need to be locked. Sorry, everybody. The vehicles in front of us needs to lock the locks on their hubs to make sure they don't get stuck. So we'll wait patiently. We, of course, don't have that problem. And our car's much smaller and much shorter, which makes it a lot more difficult to get it stuck. Possible. We've all done it, but not as likely. Oh, and the sand is very thick. There we go. So while I remember how to drive and regain some of the skills that apparently I have forgotten, it seems as though Tristan is having a day to be truly fascinated by the products of animals' digestion. Let's go and have a look at some more poop.
am indeed, Jamie. I'm busy looking at all things on the sort of defecation world at the moment, and as you can see, we found ourselves another pile of dung, and we actually have two right next to each other, which is really nice because it can give us a nice size comparison between the two of them. So on the right here, or my right, we have this big pile of fresh Nyala dung. Now the reason why I know it's Nyala is one, because of its size, and two, because of the tracks that are around in these general areas. So there's a few little tracks for Nyala here, and we saw a Nyala on the way in, so we know it's definitely Nyala dung, and it is very, very fresh. That is from about 5 minutes ago. It's still very soft to the touch, so you can see that that is very processed. So unlike the buffalo that we saw earlier that had that sort of splashed out effect because of the moisture content in the grass, these Nyala, they feed off the leaves of the trees. Alright, so their dung tends to be not as full of moisture as what you would see on a buffalo or a zebra or a wildebeest at this time of the year. Their dungs all get a lot more sort of fluid in consistency, whereas the browsers tend to really remain the same throughout the year. And they do get a little bit softer in the summer months, but generally quite similar. And most of that sort of family, the Nyala, Kudu, they all produce a very similar pellet like this that has a little tip to the end of it. So you see how it's got like a little sort of spike on the end, and then on the back side of it, I'm just trying to find one that I can show you. So if I move that one over, you see it's got a little depression where the other one was sitting up against it when it was coming out of the rear end. So there's quite a common sort of look on a Trachylephan's dung. They all have that little indentation on the backside and then that little sort of spike on top. So a nice way to look at it. And then in complete sort of contrast to that Nyala dung is this. Now this is an absolutely massive pile of Ellie dung. Now you can see, if you look at the size of my hand, look at how big that is. It is absolutely huge. So I'd imagine that this would have come out of a rather large male, because it is very, very big. And this is exactly how we found it. It was just like this. So he was obviously standing in the shade of this tamboti tree. It really is so nice and cool in here in comparison to the sun. So he would have been standing here and it would have just dropped, and it managed to have enough sort of glue to stay together. But if we look at the consistency of the outside of this dung, it is very, very different. The Nyala's was very shiny, very sort of smooth, whereas this, you can see there's lots of material on the outsides of it, and it is a lot more fibrous than what we're seeing with the Nyala dung. And the reason for that is because the elephants are not able to regurgitate, so they can't bring up balls of food and chew them and make the maximum sort of use out of the food that they do feed on. Also, this was at a period of time, it's very, very old, this dung, when this elephant wasn't feeding off that much grasses. So I think this is prior to the sort of big rains that we had, and the reason why is because if you look here, you can see there is lots of root material and bark material. Now this would be of an elephant when it's struggling to find grasses. If we find all fresh dung from the recent time, we're going to find that the dung is all very full of grass and very few little bits like this that is more sort of fibrous and more barky and rooty than what we're seeing now. But if I break it open, which it really is quite solid at the moment, so I'm going to try and break it there. Now you can see what I was talking about earlier. We were talking about the buffalo dung, and I was saying to you that there's quite a lot of activity. But if you have a look at this elephant dung, you can actually see how much insect activity took place when it was still moist. So if you look in there, you can see that there is some sort of building material, or this soil that's been packed in there. Now those were all tunnels that were done by termites. As the termites were coming in here when it was still moist, they were harvesting bits of material that would have been passed through the elephant's digestive system. Now the reason why the termites are really looking for this is because with an elephant is they digest enough of the material to break down the cellulose that makes it much easier for them to feed off, but it also, they don't take nearly as much nutrients as is in something like a Nyala, so there's really still quite a bit of food available for them. So they really like elephant dung. You'll find them in hippo and rhino dung as well. And like I say, depending on the species of the termites, they actually need this to be able to consume the plant material, because they struggle otherwise with those cellulose structures. So Anita, you're also wondering whether dung beetles use all types of dung or just Ellie dung. No, they'll use all types. So especially in a situation like this with fresh Nyala dung, if I take a little stick and I squash them, you can see, look, they actually squash up and they become quite sort of pliable. And you can see, look at how fine those fibers are in comparison to the elephant. It's quite amazing. It's much like the scrub hares. But the dung beetle will use its sort of spiked legs and its shovel-like head, and it eventually manipulates this into a ball while it's still wet, and so they can use this. But generally, they don't like to use the nyala dung or impalas or any of those because there's not as much nutrients in it. So it means that the little larvae is not going to get nearly the same amount of food as a little baby grub, and when it hatches next year or in many years' time, it's going to be very small in comparison to some of the others. But if they get something like rhino, elephant, hippo, even zebra, which are all hindgut fermenters and don't process their food nearly as much, there is far more that they're able to feed off, and those grubs then get very fat and healthy and can grow very, very large inside there. So this is much better. It's also much easier to manipulate. It tends to be not as tightly combined, and it tends to be a lot more sort of loose and therefore easier to be able to manipulate and move around. Right, so we're going to leave our big balls of dung and we're going to carry on. And while we do that, let's have a look at Jamie while she follows Xongile moving down the road.
Goodness gracious, great balls of dung that Tristan has been playing with this afternoon. In the meantime, we are still with Xongile, but before we do, for those of you that have just joined us, my name is Jamie. This afternoon, Craig is bringing you these incredible images, and we're sitting with a beautiful young leopard known as Xongile. I'm actually sorry, Craig, I know she sat down so beautifully for us. I'm actually going to reposition so that the vehicles behind us can get a view as well. At the moment, I am... Oh, Xongile, this is the worst possible spot. I'm blocking everybody else's view. But let me just do this for now, and then at least one vehicle can come and see her. There we go. So she's settled down. She's been spotted by a troop of vervet monkeys, and they are calling their alarm call across. It's carrying far. They're all around her. And I think that's one of the reasons why she's trying to find herself a slightly more hidden spot. Okay, admittedly she's now lying in the middle of the road, but she is at least shielded on every side by thick trees. And I think she's trying to just hide away from the monkeys so that they'll forget about her. Of course, her cover's blown completely if she did want to hunt anything. Oh, that was such a sigh. Deep and heavy one. There we go. So finally, Xongile seems to have settled for now, resting and doing what leopards should be doing, not that they ever do at this time of day, which is taking it easy in the shade and having a jolly good clean. No matter how scared and alone she may feel, it would not do to neglect her ablutions. Licking the side of her paw and then rubbing her face with it, just like for those of you with house cats at home, with pet cats, you'll have seen your cat do exactly the same thing. And sometimes it's almost uncanny, some of the things that you see in these big cats that little cats do as well. Cleaning right behind her ears. Hey Jamie, nice name. Jamie, on the subject of names, you want to know how it was that Xongile and Hosana got their names. Now, we actually named them early, and typically leopard cubs are only named after a year old, but because what's tended to happen is that the leopard cubs get nicknames and then it becomes confused with their official name, and it just gets confusing for everybody. We knew that these leopard cubs would end up getting nicknames, so we requested of the guides that we start the naming process a little bit earlier than we might otherwise have, which is the same thing that we've done with Tundi's cub. And the way in which we named these particular cubs was to put forward suggestions that were then voted on at a rangers meeting. So a rangers meeting is where all the guides of the various lodges of the areas come together and discuss various niggles or ways to improve things or improve their guiding and so on, our guiding. And the different lodges put forward their suggestions. The suggestions for their names actually came from the Djuma guides, so from Taxon and Aubrey. They were the ones that put forward Xongile and Hosana. And those were the names that were chosen for them at the rangers meeting. Sometimes different places work differently. And generally, there is an accepted norm, it doesn't always work like this, that if the leopards spend most of their time on your property, your names are probably inevitably going to be the ones that are chosen, just because you know the animal better. So for us, Xongile and Hosana, obviously we've spent a huge amount of time with them, whereas for example, with Shadow's cubs, she spends a lot of time on Arathusa. She can put about right there. Let me duck out of the way. I'm not ducking, by the way. This often causes confusion. I'm not ducking because I don't want her to see me. I'm ducking because otherwise my big head gets in the way of the camera. But the reason I'm explaining that is we've had a few questions before. So you might see the legs of one of the trackers. That is one of the other lodges here, and that is Fanuti, who is watching as the leopard walks past him. We're just going to have to sit here patiently and wait for her to move. If she keeps moving into this very dense bush, I might leave her to go on her way. I don't mind so much following her now while she's on the road, but bashing after her now, when she's desperately searching for any sign of her mum, I don't think would be... Let's see how thick the vegetation gets. Now, Leslie, I'm sorry, I should definitely have answered that question first. Leslie, you want to know what their names mean. Xongile means the beautiful one, and Hosana means the little chief. Hosa means chief, Hosana, little chief, which I think is adorable. She's still there. She's stopped for now. Are you off? Cheers, guys.